Welcome to Tales by Miss A. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
In Lagos, they say a man's success is measured by the car he drives, but his ego is measured by the age of the woman in the passenger seat. At 35, Patience was the envy of Victoria Island, the VP of Nathaniel's heart and the mother of his two beautiful children, Toby and Eniola. But by 40, the vantage position she held was declared obsolete. Nathaniel didn't just break her heart, he evicted her from the life she built, trading her decade of loyalty for a girl who hadn't even finished her NYSC. He thought he was upgrading. He didn't realize that in Lagos, what is new is often cheap, and what is vintage is priceless. This isn't just a story of a broken home, it's the story of a woman who found her fire in the ashes of a burning marriage. The table at the Sky restaurant was set for 4. Patience smoothed the silk of her emerald dress, a color that usually made Nathaniel compliment her royal skin. Across from her sat Toby, 15, and Eniola, 12, both scrolling through their phones, unaware that the air in the room was as thin as a thread. "Where is Daddy?" Eniola asked, her voice small. "He's 30 minutes late for your birthday dinner, Mummy." "Lagos traffic, baby," Patience lied, though she knew Nathaniel's office in Marina was only 10 minutes away. When Nathaniel finally arrived, he didn't smell like the office. He smelled of expensive gin and a floral perfume that wasn't hers. He didn't sit down. He didn't kiss her forehead. He simply placed a manila envelope on the table next to her birthday cake. "Patience," he said, his voice cold and clinical, ignoring the wide eyes of his children. "I've
I have
realized
realized
we've
we
hit
have
a
hit a
ceiling.
ceiling.
You've become
You have become
comfortable,
comfortable.
heavy.
I
I
need a
need
life that moves
moves
at a different pace.
I've rented a flat for you and the kids in Yaba. My lawyer will call you tomorrow." The happy birthday song playing in the background felt like a funeral dirge. "Nathaniel," Patience whispered, her heart dropping into her stomach. "It's my 40th birthday. We have a life, we have children." "You're too old for the life I'm building now, Patience," he snapped, checking his gold watch. "A man of my status needs energy. I need a woman who hasn't been tired for 10 years. He walked out before the appetizers were served, leaving Patience holding a napkin to her mouth to stifle the scream that was clawing its way out of her throat. The transition from a mansion in Lekki Phase 1 to a 3-bedroom apartment in Yaba was a jagged pill to swallow. The children were distraught. Toby became silent, his eyes filled with a simmering rage toward his father, while Eniola cried for her old room, her old life, and the father who now only sent maintenance money through an assistant. Patience looked in the mirror of their new, cramped bathroom. The stress had carved lines around her eyes. Her skin looked dull. She felt like a discarded wrapper on the streets of Oshodi. "Mummy, are we poor now?" Eniola asked one evening as the generator groaned outside. Patience knelt, taking her daughter's hands. "No, Eni, we are just starting a different chapter. Your father took the house, but he didn't take the grace." But as she lay in bed that night, the silence of Yaba felt deafening. She scrolled through Instagram, a habit she knew was toxic, and saw it, a photo of Nathaniel at a beach club in Elash. His arm was wrapped around a girl named Titi, whose skin was as tight as a drum and whose smile was purely transactional. The caption read, "New beginnings, out with the old, in with the gold." Patience turned off her phone and wept until the Lagos sun began to peek through the curtains. She realized then that she had 2 choices. She could fade away into the background of Nathaniel's success, or she could become the woman he'd be forced to look up to from the gutters of his own regret. The transition from the cool marble of Lekki to the humid, relentless energy of Yaba was a baptism by fire. But as the weeks turned into months, the tears dried into a salt-crusted mask of determination. Patience stopped checking Titi's Instagram. She stopped waiting for Nathaniel's "I'm sorry" texts that never came. Instead, she started waking up at 5, to the sound of the neighborhood mosques and churches competing for the soul of Lagos. Patience had a degree in architecture that had gathered dust for 15 years while she designed school lunchboxes and PTA fundraisers. With her savings dwindling, she walked into Apex Design Studio in Victoria Island. She didn't look like the broken woman who had crawled out of Lekki. She wore a sharp, anchor-print blazer and a confidence she had to fake until her heart caught up. "I'm here to see the
I am
principal
here
partner,"
to see the
she told the
principal partner.
receptionist. "Do you have an appointment, Ma?" the young girl asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Tell him Patience Adelaja is here. Tell him I'm the one who designed the National Theatre renovation pitched 10 years ago before I retired." 10 minutes later, she wasn't meeting the principal. She was standing in a glass-walled office facing a man who looked like he belonged on a runway, not a construction site. Luke was 31, with skin the color of dark roasted cocoa and eyes that seemed to read the subtext of every word she spoke. The legendary Patience, Luke said, standing up. He didn't look at her age, he looked at the portfolio in her hand. I studied your thesis in uni. Why did you stop?
I was
I was
busy
busy
building a
building a
man.
man, Patience said, her voice steady. Now I'm here to build myself. Luke leaned back, a small, intrigued smile playing on his lips. Lagos doesn't wait for anyone to find themselves Patience, but if you can still draw like you did back then. I have a project in Ikoi that's failing. Fix it and you have a desk. The glow-up wasn't just about expensive creams or the gym, it was the light returning to her eyes. Patience threw herself into the Ikoi project. She was on site at 7, wearing a hard hat and jeans, directing men who initially scoffed at a woman of her age giving orders. She earned their respect with her precision. She earned Luke's respect with her vision. One evening, as the sun dipped below the Lagos lagoon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, Luke walked onto the site with 2 cold bottles of malt. You're still
You are
here,
still
he
here.
noted, handing her a drink. I have 2 children to prove a point to Luke, she replied, wiping sweat from her brow, and a man to make invisible. Luke stepped closer, the space between them suddenly charged with the heavy electric tension of a Lagos storm. You know, Patience, Nathaniel is a fool. In this city everyone wants the newest building, but the wise ones, they know that the structures with the deepest foundations are the ones that survive the seasons. He reached out, his thumb grazing a smudge of white plaster on her cheek. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt through Patience she hadn't felt in a decade. You aren't old, Patience, Luke whispered, his voice dropping an octave. You're a masterpiece that he wasn't sophisticated enough to understand. While Patience was finding her rhythm, Nathaniel was finding out that youth came with a very high price tag. Titi didn't cook. Titi didn't care about Tobai's failing grades or Eniola's sudden withdrawal. Titi cared about the newest iPhone, the wig of the month, and why Nathaniel didn't have enough vibes to stay out at the club until 4 a.m.
Nate, baby, why are you
Nate, babe,
grumpy?
why are you so grumpy? Titi whined, pouting for a selfie while Nathaniel stared at a pile of unpaid school fees. It's just money. Let's go to Dubai next week. Nathaniel looked at her, really looked at her. Her beauty was undeniable, but her conversation was as shallow as a puddle in the dry season. He missed the way Patience used to balance the books. He missed the way the house smelled of home, not just expensive takeout and synthetic hair. He picked up his phone to call Patience but stopped. He had told the whole of Lagos she was expired. How could he admit he was the one rotting from the inside out? The momentum in Yaba was shifting. The exile was no longer a punishment, it was a sanctuary. Patience's skin began to glow, not from expensive spa treatments, but from the raw, unfiltered satisfaction of earning her own way. Working with Luke was like breathing fresh air after years in a smoky room. He didn't bark orders, he asked for her vision. He didn't see a mother of 2, he saw a master of her craft. One rainy Tuesday, the Lagos clouds opened up with a ferocity that flooded the streets of Victoria Island. The power at the studio flickered and died, leaving them in the amber glow of battery-powered lanterns. The drainage on the Ikoi site is holding, Patience said, pointing at the blueprints. She felt Luke's warmth behind her. I know, Luke whispered, his breath ghosting over the nape of her neck. I wasn't looking at the blueprints, Patience. I've been watching you for 3 hours. The way you solve problems, it's magnetic. Patience turned, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Luke, I'm 40. I have 2 children who are my world. I don't have time for vibes and Lagos games. Luke stepped into her space, his large, calloused hands framing her face. I don't want a girl to play games with, Patience. I want a woman to build an empire with. Your age isn't a sentence, it's a qualification. He kissed her then, not the perfunctory, distracted kiss Nathaniel had given her for years, but a deep, hungry claim that tasted of rain and unspoken promises. The real test wasn't the office. It was the 3-bedroom flat in Yaba. When Luke showed up on a Saturday with a box of the best suya in Glover Court and a new PlayStation game for Tobai, the atmosphere was thick with suspicion. Tobai, now 16 and protective of his mother's fragile peace, stood with his arms crossed. My dad says women like my mum are supposed to stay quiet and pray. Why are you here? Luke didn't flinch. He sat on the edge of the sofa looking Tobai in the eye.
Your dad is a man who
Your
fears
dad
what
is
he
a
can't
man who
control.
fears what he
I
can't
am here
control.
because your mother is the
I'm
most
here
brilliant
because your mother
architect
is
I've
the
ever
most
met.
brilliant architect I've ever met, and because she makes me want to be better. Also, I'm rubbish at this game and I heard you're the king of it. By the end of the night, Eniola was laughing at Luke's jokes, and Toby was grudgingly showing him how to level up. As Luke left, he squeezed Patience's hand. They are wonderful, Pat. They are a reflection of the woman you are, not the shadow Nathaniel tried to turn you into. That night, after the children were asleep, Luke returned. He didn't come with gifts. He came with a hunger that matched the fire Patience had been suppressing for a decade. In the quiet of her Yarba bedroom, the outside world, the noise of Danfo buses and distant generators, faded away. When Luke undressed her, he didn't rush. He traced the stretch marks on her hips, the silvery road maps of her 2 pregnancies, with a reverence that made her ache. "You're beautiful," he murmured against her skin. "I'm not 20 anymore, Luke," she breathed, her voice trembling. "Thank God for that," he groaned, his hands sliding down to the curve of her waist, pulling her flush against his hard, athletic frame. The intimacy was transformative. Unlike Nathaniel, who had treated sex like a chore or a rite, Luke treated Patience like a goddess to be worshipped. He explored every inch of her, his mouth finding the sensitive hollows of her throat and the arch of her back. When he moved inside her, it wasn't just physical, it was an emotional reclamation. Patience found her voice that night, not in a scream of protest, but in cries of rediscovered pleasure. She realized she wasn't too old to be wanted. She was finally at the age where she knew exactly how to be loved. In the aftermath, lying in the curve of Luke's arm, Patience felt a glow that no Instagram filter could ever replicate. While Patience was basking in her new life, Titi was busy blowing Nathaniel's money on a Lagos lifestyle he could no longer afford. To maintain her influencer status, she posted a video of her and Nathaniel at a high-end club, mocking a woman who looked slightly like Patience in the background. "Imagine being 40 and still trying to enter the club. Stay home and fry dodo, I beg," Titi captioned it, laughing as Nathaniel leaned in to kiss her neck, looking tired and grey. The video went viral, but Lagos is a fickle city. Instead of laughing with Titi, the comments section turned into a battlefield. "Isn't that Nathaniel, the one whose wife just won the National Design Award for the new Ikoyi Towers?" One comment read. "Nathaniel traded a diamond for a zirconium. Look at Patience's latest photo. She's glowing. And who is that young man next to her? Omo, karma is a bus that doesn't miss its stop." Nathaniel read the comments in his office, his chest tightening. He clicked on Patience's profile, which he hadn't checked in months. There she was, standing next to a tall, handsome man, looking younger, sharper, and more vibrant than the day he met her. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of something he hadn't felt in years: regret. The heat in Lagos was no longer a burden to Patience. It was a forge, and she was the steel being tempered. As her professional reputation skyrocketed, the small girl with big God, lifestyle Nathaniel had chosen for himself was starting to taste like ashes. It started with a check-in text. "How are the kids? Just checking on you, Pat." Patience looked at her phone and felt nothing. No spark of hope, no twist of pain. She was in the middle of a site inspection for the Ikoyi Towers, her hair braided back in a crown that made her look like a modern Nefertiti. "Everything okay?" Luke asked,
Just a
leaning
ghost
against a
trying to
stack
haunt a
of
house that's
imported
already been
Italian
renovated.
tiles. "Just a ghost trying to haunt a house that's already been renovated," she smiled, sliding the phone into her pocket without replying. Nathaniel, sitting in his increasingly quiet office, stared at the read receipt. For the first time in his life, he was the one waiting. Titi was out vlogging, at a brunch he had paid for, and the silence in his mansion was deafening. He missed the sound of Toby's video games and Eniola's piano practice. Most of all, he missed the peace that Patience brought into a room, a peace he had mistaken for boredom. The following Sunday, Nathaniel drove his Mercedes to Yarba. He felt out of place in the bustling, crowded neighborhood, his luxury car attracting stares from the local street boys, area boys. He knocked on the door of the flat. When it opened, he didn't see the haggard woman he had left. Patience stood there in a simple linen lounge set, her skin luminous, her posture tall. "Nathaniel, the kids are at the mall with a friend," she said, her voice cool. "A friend, you mean that boy on Instagram?" Nathaniel pushed his way into the living room, his ego flare-up masking his insecurity. "Patience, look at this place, it's small, it's Yarba, come back to Lekki. Titi was a mistake, she's exhausting, I want my family back." Patience leaned against the doorframe, a small, sad smile on her lips. "You didn't leave because of the house, Nat, you left because you thought I was expired. You wanted a mirror to show you how young you were. Well, Titi is that mirror, don't blame her if you don't like the reflection. I'll double your allowance, he pleaded, reaching for her hand. The kids need their father in the same house. The kids need a father who respects their mother, a deep voice boomed from the hallway. Luke walked in carrying bags of groceries. He didn't look like a boy. He looked like a man who knew exactly where he belonged. The air in the small Yarber living room turned electric. Nathaniel, the high-flying real estate mogul, looked at Luke, the rising star of the architecture world. This is private, young man, Nathaniel sneered. Nothing about Patience is private to a man who threw her away in public, Luke replied calmly, setting the groceries on the counter. He walked over to Patience and placed a protective hand on the small of her back.
You called her old, Nathaniel, but look at her.
But look at
She's
her.
the foundation,
She's
and
the foundation,
you're just a tenant who
and
can't afford the rent.
You're just a tenant who couldn't afford the rent. Nathaniel's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. You're sleeping with my wife. I'm loving the woman you were too blind to keep, Luke corrected. Patience stepped forward. Nathaniel, leave, my lawyer will handle the divorce papers, and don't worry about the allowance. I just signed the contract for the Eco-Atlantic project. I can buy my own Lecky house now. As Nathaniel walked out, his shoulders slumped. He heard the sound of Luke laughing softly and Patience joining in, a sound of genuine joy he hadn't heard in years. The adrenaline of the confrontation lingered in the air long after Nathaniel's Mercedes had sped away. Luke turned to Patience, his eyes dark with a mixture of pride and desire. You handled that like a queen, he whispered, pulling her into his arms. I felt like a survivor, she admitted, her hands tangling in the hair at the nape of his neck. They didn't make it to the bedroom. In the dimly lit kitchen, Luke lifted her onto the granite countertop, the very surface she used to prepare school lunches on. The setting was domestic, but the energy was primal. Luke's mouth was everywhere, claiming her, reminding her that she was vibrant, wanted, and alive. When he eased her clothes away, he took his time to worship the woman Nathaniel had discarded. You are my masterpiece, he groaned against her skin. The intimacy was slower this time, a deep, rhythmic connection that felt like two souls finally clicking into place. For Patience, it wasn't just about the physical pleasure. Though Luke was attentive and tireless, it was about the reclamation of her body. Every touch from Luke washed away a year of Nathaniel's neglect. In the quiet aftermath, as the Lagos rain began to drum a steady beat on the roof, Patience realized that her glow-up wasn't complete because she found a new man. It was complete because she had finally stopped seeing herself through the eyes of the man who left. The Lagos sun seemed to shine brighter for Patience, while for Nathaniel it only served to expose the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. The city that once bowed to his every whim was starting to whisper, and the whispers were becoming a roar. Nathaniel's real estate empire was built on pre-sales, promises of luxury that relied on his reputation for stability. But as news of his messy domestic life and his party boy antics with Titi spread through the elite circles of Ikoyi, investors grew nervous.
Nate, the offshore
The
partners are
offshore
pulling out of the
partners are
Lekki Phase
pulling
2
out of the
expansion.
Lecky Phase 2 expansion, his CFO said, dropping a stack of documents on his desk. They say they want a partner who is grounded. They've heard about the club fights with Titi's friends. Nathaniel rubbed his temples. It's just gossip, I'll fix it. You can't fix it while Titi is posting videos of you passed out on a yacht, the CFO countered. People trusted Patience. She was the one who vetted the contracts. She was the one who kept the crazy at bay. Without her, you're just another loud man in a loud city. Nathaniel looked at the empty chair where Patience used to sit during board meetings. He had called her dead weight. Now, he realized she was the anchor that kept his ship from drifting into the rocks. Tobai and Eniola were no longer the silent observers of their mother's pain. They were growing up, and their eyes were sharp. When Nathaniel sent a driver to pick them up for a weekend at the mansion, Tobai refused to get in the car. I'm staying here, Tobai told the driver, his voice deepening with the authority of a young man. Master Tobai, your father says. My father says a lot of things, Tobai interrupted. He said my mum
He
was
said
too
my mom
old.
was too old.
He said she
He said
didn't
she didn't matter.
Tell him
Tell
I'm
him I am busy helping her with the blueprints for her new film.
Tell him I'd rather be in Yarber with a mother who cares than in Lecky with a woman who can't even remember my birthday. Eniola followed her brother's lead, clutching her violin case. Tell Daddy I don't like the way Titi smells like cigarettes and lies. When the driver returned to the mansion empty-handed, Nathaniel felt a coldness settle in his bones that no amount of expensive brandy could warm. He had traded his legacy for a temporary thrill, and his children were the first to let him know he had lost. The annual Lagos Builders and Visionaries Gala was the event of the year. Usually, Patience attended as Nathaniel's +1, wearing whatever modest dress he chose for her. This year she arrived alone, or so the paparazzi thought. She stepped out of a sleek black car, wearing a gown of molten gold that hugged her curves and flowed behind her like a river of fire. Her skin was polished to a high sheen, and her laughter rang out across the red carpet. Halfway through the cocktail hour, Luke joined her. He didn't hide their relationship. He tucked her hand into the crook of his arm and introduced her to the governor as the lead architect of the Eco-Atlantic waterfront. Nathaniel, standing in a corner with a bored Titi who was busy filming her outfit for TikTok, watched them. He saw the way men looked at Patience, not with pity but with genuine hunger and respect. He saw the way Luke looked at her, as if she were the only woman in the room. "She looks different," Nathaniel muttered to himself. "She looks old," Titi snapped, not looking up from her screen. "Can we go now? The lighting here is trash." Nathaniel looked at Titi, her heavy makeup, her shallow complaints, her lack of substance. Then he looked at Patience, who was debating urban planning with a billionaire. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't replaced Patience. He had downgraded, and the whole of Lagos was watching him fail. After the gala, the adrenaline of the public victory was high. Luke drove Patience back to her flat, but they didn't make it past the front door before the passion ignited. "You were the star of that room," Luke groaned, his hands tangling in her hair as he pressed her against the cool wood of the door. "I felt alive," Patience whispered, her fingers fumbling with his tie. This time the intimacy was celebratory. Luke carried her to the bed, his movements urgent but deeply attentive. He stripped away the gold gown as if he were unwrapping a precious gift. "I want you to know," Luke murmured, his lips tracing the line of her jaw, "that I don't love you because you're a success. I love you because you survived the dark to find your own light." When they joined, it was with a fierce, rhythmic intensity that left them both breathless. Luke pushed her to heights Nathaniel had never even bothered to explore. He made her feel every bit of her 40 years, not as a burden, but as a masterpiece of experience and desire. In the quiet after, Patience lay across his chest, listening to his heartbeat, knowing that the woman Nathaniel called too old was currently the happiest woman in Lagos. The downfall of a man who builds his house on sand is slow at first, then happens all at once. In the glittering circles of Lagos, Nathaniel was finding out that when you trade a queen for a pawn, the whole board collapses. The Lekki dream was turning into a nightmare. The offshore investors hadn't just pulled out, they had filed for an audit. Nathaniel's reckless spending to keep Titi in designer bags and luxury vacations had drained the company's operational reserves.
The
bank
bank
is
is
calling in the
loan
loan
for the
on
mansion.
Nate, his lawyer said, refusing to look him in the eye. "You used the house as collateral for the Lekki expansion. Since that project is dead, the house is gone." Nathaniel sat in his gold-leafed office, the air conditioning humming a low, mocking tune. "They can't do that. I'm Nathaniel Adelarger." "You were Nathaniel Adelarger," the lawyer corrected. "Now you're a cautionary tale." When he went home to tell Titi, he didn't find comfort. He found suitcases. Titi was packing her content creation, ring light and her wigs. "Where are you going?" Nathaniel asked, his voice shaking. "Babe, I'm a brand," Titi said, checking her reflection. "I can't be seen living in a place with a bank property sticker on the gate. It's bad for my engagement. Plus, I met this guy from London. He's 28 and he just launched a crypto app. No hard feelings, yeah." She walked out without even looking back at the man who had destroyed his family for her. While Nathaniel's world was shrinking, Patience's world was expanding. She had just secured a partnership to design a sustainable housing estate for the state government. Her brand, Vintage Grace, was the talk of the industry. That evening, the Yaba apartment felt warm, not with the stifling heat of poverty, but with the glow of achievement. Luke arrived with a bottle of vintage wine. To the woman who turned too old into too powerful to ignore, Luke toasted. The celebration moved from the dining table to the bedroom with a slow, simmering heat. Now that the external battles were won, their intimacy had shifted. It wasn't just hungry, it was deeply anchored. Luke moved over her with a deliberate, worshipful slowness. He spent an hour just discovering the new confidence in her touch. When he entered her, it felt like a homecoming. Patience wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, her breath hitching as she realized she was no longer performing for a man's approval. She was sharing herself with a partner. "I love you, Patience," Luke whispered into the crook of her neck, his body tensing as they reached the peak together. "I love the woman I am when I'm with you," she whispered back, tears of release pricking her eyes. A week later, Patience was overseeing the final touches on her new office in Victoria Island, a space she had bought and paid for herself. The door pushed open, and Nathaniel walked in. He looked 10 years older than he had at the gala. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who had been chewed up and spat out by the very city he tried to conquer. "Pat," he croaked, "the bank took the house, Titi is gone, the kids, they won't pick up my calls." Patience didn't stop sketching. "The kids are busy, Nathaniel. Toby is at basketball camp and Eniola is at a music conservatory. I'm paying for it now so they don't have to worry about your maintenance checks bouncing." Nathaniel fell to his knees. "I was wrong. You weren't the one who was old, I was the one who was immature. Please, let's go back to the way it was, I'll do anything." Patience finally looked at him. She didn't feel anger. She didn't even feel satisfaction. She felt a profound sense of pity, the way one looks at a ghost that doesn't realize it's dead. "Go back to the way it was?" she asked softly. "Why would I ever want to be that small again? You didn't just lose a wife, Nathaniel. You lost the only person who would have stayed with you when the money was gone. You traded loyalty for a fresher model, and now you're standing in a showroom with nothing to buy." "Pat, please." "Get up, Nathaniel," she said, her voice turning to iron. "My architect is coming in for a meeting, and I don't want him to trip over the past on his way in." As Luke walked in looking sharp and vibrant, he paused, seeing Nathaniel on the floor. He didn't say a word. He just walked to Patience, kissed her temple, and opened his laptop. Nathaniel stood up, his dignity in tatters, and walked out of the glass doors. Through the window, he saw his own reflection in the sleek glass of the building. He looked like a stranger in a world he no longer owned. The dust of the old life had finally settled, leaving behind a clear path for Patience to walk. In Lagos, your glow is your greatest revenge, and Patience was beaming. Patience didn't move back to Lekki. She chose a penthouse in Old Ikoyi, a place with history, high ceilings, and a view of the water that looked toward the future. Moving day wasn't a somber affair, it was a celebration. Toby and Eniola ran through the halls, picking their rooms. For the first time in years, the tension that had lived in their shoulders was gone. "Mummy, this house feels light," Eniola said, hugging her mother. "That's because there are no secrets here, Eni," Patience replied. Luke arrived later with a truck full of indoor plants, monstera and palms to bring life to the space. As they arranged the greenery, the dynamic was clear. They were a team. Nathaniel had been a boss, Luke was a partner. "You did it, Pat," Luke whispered, looking out at the city lights. "You built a life that's even more beautiful than your blueprints." Lagos never forgets a scandal, but it loves a comeback even more. A prominent lifestyle magazine featured Patience on its cover. The headline read, "Vintage Grace, Why Patience Adelaja is the New Face of Lagos Luxury." The article didn't mention Nathaniel by name, but it spoke of rebuilding from the ruins and the beauty of architectural maturity. Nathaniel, now living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a noisy part of Serula, saw the magazine at a local kiosk. He looked at the woman on the cover, vibrant, sophisticated, and undeniably happy. He looked at his own hands, they were shaking. His business was in receivership. The big man status he had worshipped had evaporated. When he tried to call his old friends for a loan, their assistants told him they were in a meeting. He had become the man who fumbled the bag, and in Lagos that is a social death sentence. The first night in the new penthouse was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city. After the children were asleep, Luke and Patience sat on the balcony, the salt air from the lagoon cooling their skin. "I don't
I
ever
don't
want you to
ever
feel
want you
like
to
you have
feel
to be
like you have to be
perfect for me,"
perfect for
Luke
me.
said, turning her to face him. "I love the scars, the years, and the wisdom, especially the wisdom." They moved into the bedroom where the moon cast long, silvery shadows across the sheets. This time there was no ghost of Nathaniel in the room. There was only the present. The intimacy was profound and unhurried. Luke explored her with a deep, soulful curiosity, as if he were memorizing a sacred text. When Patience took control, she did so with a confidence she had never possessed in her 20s. She knew her body, she knew her power, and she knew she was safe in his arms. "Luke," she gasped as he worshipped her, his touch both tender and commanding. The connection was electric, a fusion of two people who had found each other at the perfect time. In the climax of their passion, Patience felt a release that went beyond the physical. It was the final shedding of her old skin. She wasn't just a mother or an ex-wife. She was a woman, whole and desired. A month later, a heavy Lagos downpour turned the streets into rivers. Patience was leaving her office when she saw a figure standing by the gate, soaked to the bone. It was Nathaniel. He didn't have his Mercedes. He was waiting for a yellow Danfo bus. He saw her sleek SUV approach and shielded his eyes from the headlights. As the gates opened, Patience paused the car. She rolled down the window just an inch. "Nathaniel," she said. He looked at her, his face a mask of exhaustion. "I just wanted to say
I saw the magazine. You look like the woman I first fell in love with, only better."
"I am better," Patience said, her voice devoid of malice. "I hope you find peace, Nathaniel, but you won't find it looking backward." She rolled up the window and drove through the gates. In her rearview mirror, she saw him step into the crowded bus, disappearing into the sea of people he once thought he was above. The story of Patience became a folktale in the markets and the boardrooms of Lagos. It was the story told to women who felt their light fading, and to men who thought youth was the only currency that mattered. At the opening of her latest project, a community centre for girls, Patience stood on the podium. Luke sat in the front row with Tobai and Eniola, their faces beaming with pride. "They told me I was too old," Patience told the crowd, her voice echoing with the strength of a woman who had found her centre. "They told me my best years were behind me, but I've learned that life doesn't end at 40, it just stops being a rehearsal. To anyone being told they are expired, remember that a diamond is just a piece of coal that stayed under pressure long enough to realize its value." As she stepped down, Luke caught her, spinning her around. The glow was no longer just a metaphor, it was her reality. Nathaniel was a memory, Titi was a footnote, but Patience was the architect of her own forever. In the vibrant, unforgiving streets of Lagos, where the hustle never sleeps and the heart often hides, Patience's journey reminds us that the brightest fires are often built from the coldest ashes. She didn't just survive a betrayal. She redesigned her entire world, proving that age is merely a number, but grace is an eternal currency. As Nathaniel fades into the echoes of the city's past and Patience steps into a future built on genuine love and self-worth, we close the book on this Lagos folktale. Let's hear from you. A story like this is meant to be shared, debated and felt. We want to know your thoughts. The best moment? Was it the moment Patience walked into the gala in her molten gold gown, or the final showdown where she told Nathaniel he was tripping over the past? The lesson: what is the ultimate moral of this story for you? Is it about the power of self-love, the reality of karma, or the importance of choosing a partner who sees your soul instead of your birth year? The glow up: have you ever had a Patience moment, where rejection became your greatest redirection? Don't let the story end here. Comment below, share your favorite chapter and the moral you're taking away today. Tag a friend, send this to someone who needs a reminder that they are a masterpiece, not an expiration date. Subscribe, follow, for more emotional stories of resilience, Lagos grit, and the unexpected power of a woman's glow. Remember, in the story of your life you are the architect. Make sure your foundation is built on solid ground.